you want to give it?
Yeah, we go see if anybody else is doing it.
She's got mute.
I think I can mute it, and then we'll tell her that we mute her.
But it comes and goes. Like there's noise again, there's no.
Hear about layoffs coming up. Layoffs are coming up.
Okay.
Big time.
Aaron can't make it tonight.
Excuse me?
Aaron can't make it tonight.
I knew that.
Right, Susan, or Troy said Aaron would be here soon. I said, no, she won't.
No, we said Susan would be here soon. About 5 minutes ago. Aaron's at a district soccer playoffs in Harrisburg.
I muted her on there. Let her know at some point she needs to comment herself.
Okay, I'd like to call the meeting of October 27, 2022 of the Plainville Township Planning Commission meeting to order. Just, Karen, we have you muted because of the noise, so when it gets to public comments, we will unmute you if you have something that you want to say. Our first action item is to approve the minutes from the September 22nd, 2022 meeting.
I'll make a motion to approve.
And there's not a motion, need a second. Okay, are there any corrections or questions for the minutes of September 22, 2022? Hearing none, I ask for all in favor of approving the minutes, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Okay, and that was Troy made the motion, Melissa seconded.
That's correct. We now have the open forum on the action items. The action items will be Maple Inn Estates, Upward Investments, and Keystone Court. Are there any comments from the public on the three subdivision applications that are in front of us today? Okay. Then we'll move on to the subdivision and land development applications. The first one being Maple Inn Estates. I assume you want to go through your review letter and you want to put your hands up.
If you want to give them a refresher, Maple Inn is here before, I think you had to get a special exception for the use, and then they do have conditional preliminary plan approval. So this is their final plan submission, is before the planning commission for their consideration. So if you just want to reintroduce the project quick, and then we'll hit the review letter.
Hi, I'm Justin Brewer with Powell Engineering. Here for the Maple Inn Estates project. The project is located at the site of the current Maple Inn on 322. We're proposing 24 townhouse units on a loop road. Stormwater management, we've got a couple rain gardens, fire retention basin. We've got a common area in the middle that's going to have a top lot to meet the recreation requirements of the township. It's a pretty straightforward project. We are requesting a couple waivers that I emailed over to Jim this afternoon. And it's mentioned in the technical review letter from October 18th regarding separation distance for the rain garden along 322 and Unit 1. And then also a waiver from the requirement to have the storm pipes elevated 6 inches above the bottom of the basin when they discharge. We were here, got, as Jim said, back last fall for preliminary plan approval and we're back here with our final plan submission. So if you can answer any questions you may have.
Do you guys have any questions on the proposed development itself? And if not, Mike did the review letter, he reviewed this plan initially, so we kept it with him. Any questions before I do the review letter?
The one waiver, does that address that curtain? There was a stormwater barrier?
We
Yeah,
put an impervious liner in between the unit and the rain gardens to prevent any migration of.
right, because,
And
yeah,
that's to address the setback? or
Correct.
isolation.
correct. All right, so just hitting the review letter, the plan does comply with zoning. They do need their transferable development rights for the density that they have there. So prior to the township signing their plans, they'll have to get all the transfer development right paperwork and everything through the township and approved by the solicitor. Same thing with the HOA documents need to be approved by the solicitor. The only other zoning comment refers to, in multifamily developments of greater than 10 units, they need to have centralized garbage storage, which they are showing a centralized dumpster. And Mike's comment was just that the planning commission should offer an opinion on whether the one proposed central collection area is sufficient to serve proposed development. There are 24 townhome units proposed. So I think that's been consistent through the process that they've proposed one. So does anybody have any comments or concerns about the garbage area that's proposed?
What's the size of the
area.
dumpster?
Well, I believe what we had discussed during the preliminary plan was that the centralized trash would be more or less an overflow trash, so we're intending to have individual trash collection of each of the units.
Yeah, Mike does have that in his letter. The planning commission previously recommended central trash collection for overflow in the event individual trash collection is provided. So he asked if that is the intention,
Yes.
that clearer notes be put on the plan
Correct.
to describe that.
Do these have garages? I forget.
Yes.
They do have garages.
And the HOA docs require the individual trash receptacles to be
include that.
inside the garage.
We can include that in there. Inside the garage, storage inside the garage. We can include that in there.
Why would the dumpsters if they're gonna have a roof in the garage?
Right, have dumpsters as well.
Why would they have a dumpster if they're gonna have, if they have garages with tow roofs? Like, I understand if they're in a garage, but like an individual tow roof, but like that tow roof holds a lot of trash.
I guess it's just if anybody has anything like bigger or bulk to put out, then with the tightness of the driveways, you don't have a lot of area to.
I'll just add, I believe when we were here for preliminary plan, there was some discussion surrounding that, and the ordinance requires for multifamily development over 10 units to have centralized trash collection.
Right,
You know,
it
it's
is.
discussed that
Yeah.
really the preference would be to have it.
We don't have centralized trash.
Maybe it's in the new ordinance.
They're two cars.
Yes.
Two cars.
So, yeah, it's a zoning requirement, so technically you can't fully waive it.
Did we look at that?
Okay, so any concerns about the trash configuration are shown, so they'll have individual units, and is the planning commission's recommendation that those, it be noted in the HOA documents that they need to be stored within the garage?
I mean, I don't really care, I mean, it depends on who lives there, what they want to look at, I wouldn't want to look at it, but.
Okay, so that's the zoning comments. Under Saldo, they'll have to do their financial security for the improvements. Here's a couple drafting notes regarding sheet numbers, addresses, which will come from the township, once the road's named. Outside agency approvals, the waivers that will hit under stormwater, if those are granted by the board, the date of granting shall be added. And we should have a confirmation and note on the plan that the fire hydrants and everything have been reviewed by the fire marshal. We need your final water and sewer approvals, and they have provided the top lot, which is required. Comment, the applicant shall provide information on the plans regarding the design of the proposed top lot, and ownership and maintenance will be addressed within the HOA documentation. You guys have any comments on what should be included in that top lot detail? I know some of them recently we talked about benches and trash cans, trash receptacle being provided in the area. But is there any specific criteria you guys want noted for the proposed top lot for this development?
My honest opinion is I don't care if they have trash or not. I mean, it's not a park. I mean, I don't know.
You know, here it's a little more centralized too, as opposed to larger developments. We get them more spread out, so.
Well, I don't know, if you got a dumpster right there, what do you need a trash can for?
Right. In this case, you may not, right? So. Okay, so basically just the top lot itself is all you guys looking for. All right, and then hitting the stormwater comments, and they need their NPDS permit, stormwater improvements will be included in the financial security. The two waivers that Justin noted, you guys should have a copy and passed out of the Howell Engineering waiver request letter. There's two waivers. Our office would be supportive of both waivers. We would just recommend that their granting be conditioned upon acceptance of the design also by DEP as part of an NPDS review. One is the separation distance between the infiltration facility and proposed unit 1. It's within 25 feet. They are proposing an impervious liner along unit 1 in the rain garden to prevent infiltration and seepage in that direction. And the second one, which Justin noted, is for the inlet pipe coming in to the basin to be at least 6 inches above the basin floor. Purpose of that is so the pipes can adequately drain. Due to the slopes of the pipe is noted and flat grades around the site, according to Justin's letter, is the justification for not having that full 6 inches of depth there. So we're not necessarily opposed to either waiver. Again, we would recommend that their acceptance be conditioned on DEP's acceptance of them as part of the NPDS design.
And we can both in one way.
No, we can do them together. At the end, the only other stormwater comments, the stormwater operations and maintenance agreement, which is prepared by the solicitor, and then he has a couple minor drafting comments through there, relocation of a utility pole, to show the under drains, and a diameter clarification.
So the maintenance agreement for the stormwater facilities, right? So just because most people moving into a development have no idea what a rain garden is and have no idea how to take care of it, is there going to be some type of like yearly inspection with the township that they're going to make sure that they're maintaining this correctly?
I think there are provisions in the agreements,
And the HOA will understand that this has to be done and they need to maintain it and what that actually means?
right. I think part of some of the MS4 requirements as they're being modified or changing is for more oversight on those things. I don't think this falls within the urbanized area, but yeah, we are looking and talking, going to talk with the township in the coming year about a more established program to routinely look at them. We try to check them all after major storms, to see if we see
Well, I mean,
there's
rain
these
gardens
bigger
are
developments,
more
but
maintenance. And
intensive, right.
I can see people, once the HOA's in there and the builder's out, they're just ripping stuff out, and the next thing you know, now we have flooding on 322.
Right.
So I'm just trying to avoid conflict there. And just so they, but the township should be looking at the, especially something like this, it's not a regular basin that you just mow. This is something different that requires maintenance.
Yep,
So we're an MS4 township,
We are.
and we're required to submit the routine inspections that are required.
Yearly.
So I think the HOA should be responsible for hiring an engineer to do the yearly inspections and forward that information to the township, to be included with the MS4.
not all of the township is subject to the MS4 permit. There's only certain designated urbanized areas.
But eventually, it could possibly be added to the MS4 based on, it's all based on like
Right.
population and.
Yeah,
So I think we should put the onus back on them, their association, to do the inspections, because they're ultimately gonna be responsible for any repairs that need to be made. And then we don't get into, an argument with, your office, telling them they have to repair something. The inspection should be on them. It's not huge, it's not a lot of money. And the other thing with the rain garden comment, these areas will be deed restricted, correct?
Yeah.
So in that deed restriction, that will describe how that rain garden should move, how it should be taken care of in perpetuity. And I think I got that word right.
Yes, sir.
And I think that's the way to address it, because if the residents decide they want to pull the plants out, the deed restriction can be exercised by a resident or by the township.
Well, let's be honest, what resident in a town or community is gonna be looking at the deed?
Well,
They're not.
it's going to be part of the deed, if they don't read it, that's their fault.
right. So I'll pass the
should
stormwater
run it by
O&M
them.
comments over to, Beth and Warren, and have them look at their standard O&M agreement and how we want to, if we want to refine that.
I mean, I feel
Moving
like once
forward.
the land is conveyed,
Right.
I think the township should look at it yearly, and so that when it's conveyed, the HOA understands that this is a requirement to do this. I just don't want to
But
see
they-
flooding on 325.
Then they inspect it, but they should pay for it.
Oh, yeah, I'm
The
totally
HOA
fine
should
with that.
pay for it,
But I think that the township should be looking at it every year to make sure they're maintaining this properly.
In our plans, we do provide very detailed operation and maintenance saying that it needs to be inspected. All the stormwater facilities need to be inspected twice a year.
Oh, I
And
know,
then-
but I'm not thinking these
Or
owners
after
should have
a
any
one-inch
idea what that
event.
means.
Well,
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
No, that's
yeah,
fine.
and
I'll
then
pass
it has to, I
recommendations
understand exactly where you're coming
Yeah.
from.
right, on, and we'll have conversations with the township
Okay.
about
And
having a real good defined program for that.
And who does your assessment of the cost, the capital reserves, and the cost for the HOA? Is that done internally? No, no. Who does the initial setup of the cost?
Well, usually the builder does.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if the developer, the applicants thought about putting the capital reserve together in a, for the HOA
Well,
documents.
they're gonna have to, because of the items that are gonna be there,
Right.
long-term requirements to
Right.
maintain. Well, Beth will.
Yeah, that'll be part of, they have, the HOA documents have to be reviewed by Beth's office and stuff.
Because this isn't a lot of units, and the concern is that it'll be undercapitalized,
Right.
and then when it comes time to replace blacktop, or something expensive, or snow removal, then it becomes an assessment to the folks, and people don't like assessments.
Right.
So it's better to pick it up on a monthly basis. So just whoever's gonna put it together, just make sure they don't.
We were discussing some of that just before the meeting here tonight, so we'll make sure we address all of that.
Okay, so that's the extent of the review letter. A lot of it's just outside agency approvals at this point. So if the planning commission would like, they could consider making a recommendation on the two waiver requests, and Troy, to answer your question from before, they can be done together, and you can reference in the motion, the Howell Engineering letter dated October 27th, for the two waivers.
So what the request is for a motion to recommend or not recommend the two waivers, section 20-306K 2 to 3, and section 20-311, 1D5. And I would ask that in that motion that we would add what Jen was recommending, that it be conditioned on DEP approval of the MPDS burn. So if that's acceptable, would someone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Brook.
Okay, Troy made a motion, Melissa seconded. Are there any questions or comments on the two waiver requests that we're going to take action on? The motion is to recommend to the board of supervisors approving these waiver requests. Okay, hearing no further questions, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay. Now, the next action would be if we're desiring to recommend to the board of supervisors conditional final, and that would be based on the October 18th, 2022 Technicom review letter. So if somebody would,
Can I ask a question?
no, the question should be in the beginning.
Well, how am I supposed to ask questions when I haven't yet seen it?
Okay, ask your question.
Okay. You mentioned that there are transferable development rights involved in making this possible.
Yes.
What's the sending zone for those development rights? Where'd they come from?
I think they can come from ag and I believe RC
There
also,
has to be a seller though.
correct. And that's up to the applicant to obtain them.
Okay. That has not happened yet.
I don't know whether you guys have had any discussions with any, I don't want to say suppliers of TDRs, but holders of TDRs. But that is a private matter between the applicant and whoever would own the TDRs. The township doesn't get involved in the selling of those. We oversee the documentation that comes through, but we don't, like maintain a database of who has TDRs and things like that.
And that's a condition of the Technicom letter. So if they don't meet the condition, they won't get final approval. So, do I hear a motion to recommend conditional final?
I'll make the motion.
Got a motion and a second? So we have a motion and a second. The question from the audience was noted, and it's item number 2, is that condition needs to be met before the supervisors can grant. Are there any further questions or comments? All in favor of recommending to the Board of Supervisors conditional final, condition on October 18, 2022, letter from Technicon to the Board of Supervisors recommending that they grant conditional approval. So that's what a motion or second is. Are there any questions or comments? Hearing none. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Thank you.
Our next subdivision land development application is Upward Investments Land Development Plan. It's located on Horseshoe Pike.
Well, Mike is setting up. This is down on the western end of the town. The picture where Honeybrook Hardware and Hoover Building Specialist offices that they built a few years back now. Just to the right, if you're facing from 322, of Hoover's office, there's a long driveway that goes back that also serves the existing Upward Investments property, a manufacturing building there along 322. Their lot goes up and wraps behind Hoover Building. There's a kind of an ag field triangular area back there. That's where they're planning on putting a new warehouse manufacturing building with an office back on that triangular portion of the property. So that does abut the open space for Brandywine Preserve, Whitehorse Glen, whichever one you know it as. So just to give you a location, that's what that is. I'll let Mike introduce the plan. This is their first submission to us, so tonight's kind of an introduction to the plan. I think Mike will talk a little bit about landscaping and just get any general comments and feedback as they continue to refine the plan, get their NPDS permit submitted, and things like that.
So again, my name's Mike Cowan with Commonwealth Engineers. Representing Upward Investments, who are looking to expand their business with approximately 35,000 square foot new building. It'll be on the southern part of their property. So here's Horseshoe Pike on this side here, and then this is the development area with the new building. So we submitted, we have Jen's review letter, and I guess any questions, we pretty much went through the review letter, looking to comply with just about everything. I discussed this with Jen earlier today.
So what is it that you said just about everything? What's in here that you don't think you can comply with?
I guess maybe justify. I don't think there's anything that we wouldn't provide for. There might be a couple waivers that we would need to get regarding some stormwater items and possibly landscaping. But other than that, we're still working with the sewer authority to iron out how the sewer is going to work as far as the number of EDUs that are going to be required. But other than that, I do believe we would be complying with the letter.
Okay, so Mike's reviews, ultimately, it's about a 35,000 square foot building going back there with parking, loading area for trucks. So Mike Reiner did this one also. So running through zoning, it's in the Wellhead Protection Overlay District Zone 3. The proposed use is fine for within Zone 3. They need to verify if wetlands exist. They know they'll have a wetland consultant go out and look. I did drive through the site today. The existing basin that are my notes in here doesn't look like it contains, wetlands, but again, I'm not a wetland expert, so they will have that investigated. They need their dumpster. Applicant indicated they'll comply with that. Same thing with the other zoning comments in here. The parking they can comply with. They don't intend to have any outdoor storage areas. They'll do truck turn templates. We discussed lighting, so they should be able to comply with that. Number 9, the loading and unloading in truck circulation areas. He indicated those are at least 250 feet from the residential uses that are within Brandywine Preserve. So those truck areas shouldn't be an issue. The use is permitted by right. They will have to adjust their impervious numbers, but they are still well within the allowable percentage, which is 60.
I did go back and look, and the numbers you have here
Or closer.
Yeah, I missed the gravel area.
Okay.
So,
So ultimately, they'll end up about 53% impervious coverage, and it's 65% allowable. So they can comply zoning-wise. Going into the Saldo comments, some of them were just adding zoning boundaries, legend, plan sheet numbers. Number 6 is the planning modules, sewage planning modules, Mike was referring to, they're working with the sewer authority. They're doing molasses manufacturing in the proposed facility. So that process, they indicate uses a lot more water than it puts out. So usually, your sewer is kind of based on the water coming in, it's kind of expected to be fairly balanced. In this case, it would be a lot more water coming in than going out. So they're working with the sewer authority and water on exactly how that's going to go through, but before plans can be finally approved and recorded, they'll have to have their sewage planning modules approved, and all agreements with the water and sewer authorities, get addressed as part of the process. They will have to go through PennDOT and determine if the existing access points are acceptable for the, increased traffic and manufacturing space that's going on here.
What hours of operation would be the operation?
I will need to verify that, as you know.
I mean, just because they're abutting a residential area, like.
Is this do they currently occupy the building that's on the
Yes.
property now, and so this is just an expansion of that area? Okay. So, but yeah, you guys can verify the hours.
Yeah. I don't see any issue complying with the current industrial regulations.
Okay. 11 and 12 are water and sewer. Number 10 just talks about the existing access drive coming in. Mike and I talked about this earlier. Looking at, there's a couple spots when I drove the driveway today that could use a little bit of regrading and, filling in. So we talked about some notes on the plan, just to make sure that that existing driveway is restored to a good condition. Number 14 is one of the items that Mike wanted to talk about. So you have the industrial use, as we noted, against the Brandywine Terrace, not Brandywine Terrace, Brandywine Preserve, open space back there. Mike did print out an aerial. There's a lot of existing buffering and landscaping that was put in as part of the Brandywine Preserve development that runs along the property line. So this triangular area here, which is currently farmed, is what's being developed. So there's existing buffering on this side. The ordinance under the sellage would require a screening buffer between the proposed non-residential use and an existing residential use, which would be 2 rows of staggered alternating plantings. So they are proposing, they do have a landscape plan on here that is proposing some landscaping, along the back edge. It's not the 2 staggered rows that are specified in the ordinance, so they would need a waiver to allow that configuration. And they, so I guess they were looking for some of your feedback, whether you would consider a waiver to allow the landscaping configuration as shown, given the existing landscaping that's there. So I don't know if you guys have any initial feedback on that tonight.
How long ago was it you did your building, Rich?
So,
And we cut back, you gave us a section on landscaping and you cut back on that. What's that look like today? Is it a pretty good barrier?
I think it's a good barrier. I mean, you can, drive by and look. I think, some of the issues we had in the past was the planting them too close, and we had trouble in a few years with someone dying out because pine trees every 10 feet don't last. And we have a good existing road back, and we're not opposed to landscaping, but it just doesn't seem practical to add that much more there.
I'm looking at the grading plan, it's pretty flat as it goes into the residential area. And what's that tie-in road that we're seeing? Was
That's
it
a long,
that?
I think that's just a right-of-way reserved. think it was reserved for future development because they were developed before Cooper's property and all this was developed. So I think it was an axe right of way included on the Brandywine Preserve plans when that was, development was originally done, just in case there were to be.
Do you recall any discussion about that? Because that is a single entrance community, and I wondered if that, the purpose of that was future secondary access, which I'm not.
So, you know, when that went in, it's like you said, a single point access, so then the pedestrian walkway had to be made wide enough to get an emergency vehicle back through there, and then they also provided that on their plan, butting up against our property. That was my property at one point, but I sold it off because of the access issues. So, that was discussed when our plan went through, it was not designated that there needs to be connected.
That, to me, that seems to be where the biggest concentration of planning should be. Right about where that road is, maybe a little bit to the southeast.
So right here, this,
Right, so you could do, yeah, if you match it up, like, fold this the same way as their landscaping plan. This is that corner, I think we're
Right.
talking about in here,
Well, not quite.
not quite at this point.
It comes almost to the corner.
Yeah, the right of way is kind of
Yeah.
centered on here. There's the lines up here.
The lines are on the
And
front.
right here.
Oh,
Yeah,
right
right
there.
there.
Yeah. I was just thinking, like, I was just, this is the area where I think we should make sure that, you got some pretty good planning to show.
And the pine trees do come right across.
Excuse me?
That's the quickest point of residential.
Yeah, that would be the only thing. There's a lot of area here.
right,
It just
So
seems like
they
this
do
might be
have-
the area. And I was curious how,
Yeah,
that,
back here.
Now that's thrown together, like, I mean, if Jen drove through today, I don't know what her thoughts were, but we could try to get.
I mean, if it's there,
It's
now.
a pretty nice buffer on the White Horse Drive development. Those trees seem to have really matured.
That's a good screen.
Over the years, they do a pretty good screening.
How large is
And
the building going to be? How large is the building going to be? 35?
35.
I think it's almost 35,000.
No.
High.
BI came forward at 35 unless
Well,
you
you're TDR for that, so.
gotta get TDRs to go higher than 35.
Yeah, it just says 35 foot max.
So
It
35.
doesn't say.
So those trees are probably getting close to that now, I would imagine. They're probably in their 20s.
I walked by it, I don't know. So, yeah. I know they have matured nicely.
If you think, and they have some deciduous trees there, so, I mean, if the planning commission thinks some of the deciduous trees, maybe should be swapped out for additional evergreens, for a more solid buffer through there. Yeah, that's something you guys can consider.
Susan, long-term, what's more, I don't know if durable is the word, but is there a greater chance for something to happen to the evergreens than the deciduous?
It depends on the species. I mean, it depends on how many more invasive species they work into China.
Yeah. Hopefully no more.
Oh, no. They'll keep going.
So,
This plan looks like plenty of plans.
yeah.
I imagine some of them are that looking into legend.
Well, I think the PAs, 7 PAs, there's bigger circles off the corner of the building along the property line, and then 3 POs, and then there's 5 more POs. Those are all evergreens, I believe. So, I would encourage you, if you think it's good, I would just encourage you guys to take a drive through Brandywine Preserve, see how you see it. looking into the site, and you can drive in this driveway. They have like a main entrance is here, but then there's another driveway before you get to Hooters Building. You can drive back here, this is planted in the farm field, so you can kind of see where this is and look through. Just so you can get a feel for the existing vegetation, and then try to picture what they're proposing here, see it together.
Or
So I
you
think
can
it's-
go, what you
adequate.
look at it from.
Yeah, look at it, I drove it both ways today. So, just take a look at it before they would come on the agenda again, just for consideration, because they will be asking for that waiver to allow the alternate planting scheme shown on here.
Is what you're showing comply, or is what you're showing require some relief?
I would double check. I'll have to go to our the landscape architect that we, but I believe we do comply, it just doesn't comply with the scheme.
Right, and yeah, I think Mike's comment says it should be noted that the applicant's proposing an alternative planting scheme along the property boundary to meet the minimum planting standards of 629.5. And 629.5 is the overall one that says, here's the, square footage of the building, and here's the amount of property line.
And
So-
I believe some of it we are counting on using the buffering that was already there,
Okay.
so.
Okay, so
Is
it's
it
just,
concern of the density or the height? Regarding your personal concerns.
At this point, I don't really, I just was kind of understanding what you had here. And since it's relatively flat, and the existing evergreens have pretty good growth, my concern was the building, and that probably addresses shielding the building, so. Yeah, I'm not sure I even have any concerns, I was just trying to understand what
Yeah,
the.
the existing vegetation or trees over there do already do a lot to that.
okay, so I would just again encourage the planning commission, take a drive over there and just get a feel for what's there. The only other salary comment again is about the wellhead district. Stormwater, there's a couple notes about additional water quality controls, just to capture oils and contaminants. And I'm sure DEP will have their own comments on water quality and standards for them to meet as well. Number 4, maybe a potential waiver for the separation distance. They're going to do some additional infiltration testing out there as part of their NPDS review, and if they do need that waiver, again, they'll follow up and prepare a formal waiver request letter, and similar to what we just talked about, Maple Inn. That one, and again, they have the 6-inch above the basin floor. We would look for DEP to be in concurrence with those designs as conditions of the township granting any waivers. Number 7 is a separation distance between the property boundary and the basin discharge point. We would need a waiver as designed for that point, and when I spoke to Mike earlier today, I suggested getting an approval letter, a letter of support from the adjoining property owner, that they don't have any opposition to that discharge point being close to their property line. Again, it's not real close to their actual developed area, but we would like to have the neighbors' input on that. That one's a couple drafting comments, providing profiles, stormwater operations and maintenance agreement, and again, the same thing, we'll be talking to this township and the solicitor about that program and comments made on the prior plan. In comment 12, just a few discrepancy comments and clarifications on their calculations. General comments are their outside agency approvals that they would need. So, does anybody have any questions at this time on their proposed development or anything that was in the review letter?
How many people will be working here?
It's estimated about 20 new employees.
quite new. Well, the reason I'm asking is about the number of parking spaces. Seems like a lot.
Yeah, so it's I believe the calc is, 1.5 spaces per employee on grade shift, and I believe it's just one shift, so it'll be 20, it'll be like 30 there.
There's 44 spaces.
What's that?
There's 44 spaces.
Correct, and then there's also office, which unfortunately are two different uses that the township requires us to do those.
Yeah, we have
that many?
It's in zoning, it's part of it, so I think Mike said you can cut it down by a couple,
Yeah, when I
with
read-
the revised, because the larger part will be, is based on how employees for the, warehouse kind of manufacturing use, and then the office is based upon square footage of the office space. So I think they're going to narrow down the parking spots to what they can. If you do feel you need less, I think there are some provisions in the ordinance for like reserve parking. I forget exactly what's involved in that process, but that's something you could, if you feel it's excessive, something they may be able to, look at. It still requires you to like preserve or have the potential for the area and have your stormwater designed for it if you would ever need it.
We would be favorable for reducing what's needed rather than,
So, yeah, you can take a look, there is that option in there, but the number of spaces, it is a zoning requirement, so it's not something we can just arbitrarily waive, but I know that there are some provisions in there for reserved parking in this new ordinance. I don't know specifically what all the requirements are, but you can look into it.
So you have parking over your infiltration area?
yes.
I was gonna say, I counted on building on the 24th.
But,
Yeah.
there's some,
Yeah, I see what's happening.
yeah.
So for the reserved parking, they could just have a green space right now and pave it over if they needed it later.
I think that's what it allows, like you still count it in your impervious calculations and for your stormwater calculations. And you have to show that it's feasible to have it, but I think there is a method, whether it requires any approvals beyond just planning commission, board of supervisors, to allow that. I don't remember if it requires like a special exception or something
Didn't
like
you
that.
do that for the hardware store?
We messed around with it, and I don't remember all the details, but I think there was, we had to go for a waiver or a variance or something to get it, because we would have had to put it in, wouldn't have to strike it, I think, and depending on what the cost, in other words, it's more practical for the customer to put it in right now, and we don't strike it, and they come in and do it later. All we were trying to do here was meet the township requirements. I think we ended up being 2 spots over with our calculations. So they're, right now, I might not start out at 20 employees, but the goal is to be able to have up to 20 people working there, and that's based on calculations.
Right. So, you can look at those provisions, see if there's the ability to waive it. I think the calc's probably 1.5 times the number, so that when you do have overlapping shifts, there's enough parking there, so. But, so you can take a look at that, number of parking spaces, things like that. Any other questions or comments about?
And you're getting the parking from zoning, not salary, right?
Yes, yeah, parking is in zoning.
Is there any action that we need on this? Right?
No, I think tonight was really more of an introduction to the plan, one initial feedback, just a layout on the landscaping, thoughts on that back there, and, I think they're gonna,
So I did want to see, if you guys would be, favorable for us to come back to the next meeting, or in another plan commission meeting, and do a preliminary final rather than come back get your recommendation, go to the board, do a final plan, come back to you guys, go back to the board. If you do.
Do you think they,
I think the development's pretty refined, you know, the place they'll be, a lot of times you have these separate preliminary finals. If the project's often gonna be phased, or if it's a very large scale project that they're not as refined, you know, during their land development stage, but, you know, I think at this point they, you know, will have the layout nailed down, they'll have their, you know, stormwater concept,
So,
and things like that, so I don't know that much would change between preliminary plan and final plan, that there's gonna be much added, so.
is that something you support? What it may involve is you come back to planning, and you might get some direction on landscaping, maybe without a cleanup for the prior supervisor meeting.
Right.
I don't know what else, we'll run into. So.
So that would just be
How do you
a
feel about
that they would,
What about the timeline of the next 2 meetings? The November meeting is 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, it's probably gonna be the December. Were you
Yeah,
thinking about
so-
doing it in November?
Yeah, because we still need to submit for that, yes, which could be a long lead item.
So the
I don't see
December
it coming
meeting
back.
won't hurt you at all from a time standpoint?
yeah, I think you should ask them, whatever meeting they resubmit for, whether it is
Correct.
a very next coming one, or if it is a few months from now, whether you guys would be open to a combined preliminary / final plan approval at the same time. It doesn't sound like there's
You
any
okay?
major opposition with it, so
Okay, sounds like.
that's a waiver you could
Okay,
request.
thank you.
Thank you.
And our final subdivision and land development application for this evening is the Keystone Court expansion.
Okay. So you guys have seen this plan the past couple months. The layout, I don't think it's changed since the last meeting. We did add some of our comments last time focused on the trail points of connection into the development. So they did add additional points as we had discussed. And they have proposed a porous paving cross-section for the trail. And there's material for that was a long-discussed topic with maintenance and use of the trail as opposed to sidewalks and things like that out there. So, before I hit the review letter, are there any questions catching up on the development, proposed development or anything, or do you just want me to go through the letter? Okay.
I guess that's the one.
All right, so under zoning, I tried to condense our comments and make it a little easier for what we have left. Comment 2 is the community building. We talked last time, the planning commission recommended community area be combined with the park office. Again, ultimately, the supervisors need to determine the specifics of the building, but they are planning on using that, Jack, correct me if I'm wrong, the existing maintenance building that was up in the front area and renovating that to be a park office / community area. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay. So that's their intention. That existing building is about 22 by 26 up in the original existing park area. So does the planning commission have any other comments on the community building that you guys want passed on to the board of supervisors?
Oh, I don't even think we need it, honestly,
I know, but it's a zoning requirement and you
I know,
can't
it's just-
make it disappear. So, okay.
What's a map design?
That's all in the zoning, everything else does comply. Going under Saldo, they have Number 2, just lists items that need to be addressed prior to recording of the plans, improvements agreement, outside agency approvals, any agreements for the private streets, proof of the minimum water pressure, approval from the fire department on the hydrant layout. We do have 2 hydrants proposed in there, which does meet the SADO requirements for distances to the units. Again, stormwater operations and maintenance agreements. Comment 3 goes through their waivers. I think we've talked about all of these at some point in the discussion. They do have a formal waiver request letter that I passed out to you guys at the beginning that outlines them all. So same as the other one. If you have the same recommendation on all of them, you can reference this letter as a whole. Otherwise, you can do them in different groups or individually. So the requested waivers involve the streets, a 30-foot right-of-way instead of 50. It does have a 20-foot cartway. Again, this applies just to the new streets. It does not go back and modify the existing streets within the development. Streets shall have a minimum centerline radius of 150. Centerline radius of 150, tangents of 100 feet between inverse curves. There's 2 curves that don't meet that requirement, so they've asked for a waiver of that. Roadway grades shall be a minimum of 1%. There's an area up at the very front of the development that is just under 1%. They have added extra inlets in that area for the flat condition. And there is a Road B intersection where the intersection approaches are over 4%. That is a stop intersection, I believe. Paving radius, 30 foot is required. They're providing a 20-foot radius near unit 14. E goes to sidewalks. And that was the waiver request to allow that perimeter trail in lieu of sidewalk. New streets shall be curbed for number F. They're not curbing the streets. They have some roadside swales and inlets along those with their grading. Recreational facilities, they needed 2 tot lots, a tennis court, and a half basketball court. Their waiver request is to not provide a tennis court. They do have the 2 tot lots and a half basketball court. They have 2 benches and a trash can for each tot lot. As we noted at the beginning, the trails to be forest paving, and they have addressed those trail access points and provided additional connections into the main development that you guys talked about last month. Screening buffer along the western lot line. Again, same as we talked about for upward. That screening buffer is supposed to have 2 alternating rows of evergreen deciduous trees. They're looking to have more of a single row landscaping along there, just due to the width that's available, with the trail and the units against that existing residence near the front of the development. So overall plantings, they are providing the total number of shrubs that are required. They're looking to provide 81 of the 106 deciduous trees and 82 of the 129 required evergreen trees. So they have a waiver request to provide relief for those total number of trees and to accept the landscaping plan as proposed. I think the last waiver request has to do with allowing individual unit trash collection as opposed to the common areas. That's what's done in the existing park now, and they would like to continue that. So, you guys have questions on any of the waivers? Take a look at the landscaping plan, see what your thoughts are on the number of trees that are being provided in that screening buffer. So if you guys have any comments on any of the waivers being requested or questions, we can address those.
And the entrance where you have the 1%,
Yes.
Is there still crown? Is there still cross slope crown?
Yes.
And what, 2%? And what can we do with the bus thing? This was a community.
They have an existing bus shelter up near the front that's going to be made larger.
Is that little square on the eastern road, or the one kind of in the middle?
That's the existing one, so the new one will be bigger, and with the details.
There, I saw details in the back somewhere.
Yeah.
With their actual real details, so I have friends who design those for a living, so I was able to get those.
Got that one cheap, huh?
That was not easy, yeah, because that's not a normal thing, a bus shelter detail. If you're wondering where I got that.
Why are you 72 trees short of the requirements?
The trees that we're showing, I think, make sense for the development, given the way it's laid out. I think last meeting, we had discussed placing the number of trees that we thought made sense and, getting a waiver for the rest. The main thing we did do since the last meeting is that we took your advice and moved the trees away from the areas, especially to the rear, and the areas that you probably wouldn't see them so much, and we spread them around all lots, so you can see the green kind of everywhere now. And you asked for, I think, an additional variety of trees. So actually, this variety of trees was given to me and modified by, if anybody knows, Lisa Thomas of Blacken. So we've hired her. She just came to us on a cursory basis, and she gave us some advice on the types of trees and where they should go. But on the final plan, we're going to have her give this a go-over and make sure that we are placing them like we should. But this is her variety of trees and under her advice. But the final plan will probably have little tweaks by her.
Well, I see there's less American holly.
Pardon?
There's less American holly.
Yes. There was less of that, and I did talk to her about that. I was looking at her for the asking about the male, female. What's the variety of that?
It's American.
The American. Yeah, I talked to her about that, so she knew all about that, obviously, and so she was keen on that. So I made sure I mentioned that to her. And I think, so and for the final plan, she'll spec out the shrubs. The shrubs are just locations on this plan with the number of things, and that applies. But she'll spec all that out for the final plan.
But one of the other things I mentioned to you last time was that the placement of trees on the lot really doesn't provide any shade to the actual home building.
But then as you're saying, you want shade or you?
I think shade would be helpful.
I think the thing with the shade trees too close to the units is because these are mobile homes, so they come in and out of there. It's not like we're building permanent homes here, I don't know what your thoughts, but.
Shade of leaves and cleanup is always a concern.
We are showing a variety of shade trees all around. I think that this is, I don't know, we want to have 2 beds, so we do have the evergreen better in a lot of cases, but we don't have the, like you said, the cleanup or the, I'm afraid that over time, the intrusion of a large tree hanging over a mobile home. You said as it is, you're going to take down a couple, in the existing part, right? Problematic.
There's a couple that, as these trees do get bigger, people tend to complain about it and hang them over their house. That's popped up quite a few places. We do our best to trim them, obviously, but in a couple of these storms recently, I know that there was a pine tree, something pine tree, that it did push it, did work on sideswipe one of the homes.
Are there trees in the existing section?
Also, there are some that we want to go to.
Yeah, we have them located there. Like, so see the one over in the middle. We actually show a few proposed ones, but
actually probably just remove one because the owner requested it, which would become a problem. I think we're going to use about 20, actually. Okay, so right over here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right, it's right there, actually, we're putting the QP one, we're putting in the middle of it, but on the other side, in the front. But, there are some located about 11 Gary, like on the left side, behind unit 11, on the left side there. There are 3 in the middle.
Yeah, there's some good sized trees back there.
Yeah, but I don't think I've ever wanted to look at it, to be honest. There's one over here on this side.
Are there certain locations, Susan, like lots or areas on here that you think a few more could be added, that you could give specific direction
Well,
on?
if you're not willing to put trees in where they might actually be a benefit to the homeowners, I still think we can put more on the property because, you know, I'm uncomfortable providing a waiver when we're that many short of what's required.
What are they the most beneficial on the southern side? If it's
Well, the
located-
south and the west is gonna provide you more shade. Because that's where the sun is.
Most of the ones that are along the eastern side, I think they all have at least one tree per frontage, which would be their western side. And then some of the other ones do. When you get down towards Unit 51, I guess they have existing tree line shown there.
Are the, I'll call them the building boxes, are they accurate? Is that the size that's going to be installed?
Of
These are, yeah,
the
these are,
home unit.
these are units, these are typical units, we haven't been shown which,
So there are some units like, be a full size plan. What's this one?
73 and 74,
So like,
maybe right on the property line between.
yeah, like 73 and 74, there's pretty good, I'll call it side yard setbacks between those units. I mean, areas like that, to Susan's point, that may be some areas where some trees could be put. And there's probably, I don't know, there's some, that doesn't necessarily, you know, yeah, I get it where you're close, like here.
Maybe over here where there's no room, like where they're angled. Maybe right here on the lot, maybe you'll get one. Here it gets tighter, but here you have a little bit more room.
Are there species that like max out at like 20 feet? So that may be the consideration is, in some of these side areas that we're just talking about, that you would put a species in that's not gonna end up 50, 60 feet high with a bunch of branches that are gonna snap off in a storm or something.
Yeah, I mean, I could ask Lisa that some more, and I think we just thought the direction last time was to move, like, the number was, you know, it was okay, as long as we moved them around in better locations, so, I mean, you know, this, if you want to add some more in, I think we have to do that. And I'm gonna have Lisa do that.
Yeah, I would have her take a look and just see if she can come a little closer, you know, to meeting the full requirements. See what else, you know, she could add, and if there's any,
I seem to recall that you had red buds on this list before, and I don't see them now.
That was just another direction, we were gonna take off. I know that part of it is when you get an RLA involved, there's also a big thing that was available. And I know, I'll pick what's not using, but what's available seems to be changing over time.
I would have her take.
It doesn't look like there's really being any added in this older part of the property.
We never had any before, we just added a few this time around, and I mean, that wasn't any, we didn't have any direction on that before, I don't think, but I mean, we just kind of did it, but if you'd like to add a few more, that'd be fine, I think. maybe part of this is because a mobile home isn't exactly as strong as a little house, and you feel nervous. I don't know if that's the thought, you know.
I think you talk to
I think
your,
there's good placement around the perimeter, there's a couple in the middle.
yeah, and again, you talk to your landscape architect about, what he said about the trees that stay on the smaller side.
I think there
You know, but still provide a benefit.
There's several existing there that aren't shown maybe on the back side of these units, like, this is 6, 7, 8, 9. There's in the backyards there, there's a couple of larger trees that are currently there. But yeah, we can definitely add some more, for, what she gonna do and then for fun.
Ask her about the work-overs first. They start out at shrub size, and the one that I have, I planted it 17 years ago, and it's maybe 7 feet tall. They don't grow real fast, they don't grow real tall, but they're a nice shaped evergreen, and they're not real big.
At 7 feet tall, we were talking about providing shade.
Well, I wasn't referring to those as shade trees, but just as additional evergreens that aren't gonna get real big.
Yeah.
What are they called, Susan?
Dwarf Alberta spruce.
Okay.
Sorry, I don't know the Latin name.
No, that's fine, I like the English names. So, okay, so I'm pretty sure I had the right name.
We can, yeah, about that, we'll add some in one version, things that are appropriate.
Any other comments on the requested waivers or?
We're just kind of looking at parking it
Okay.
to see if,
Question?
Yeah.
What's the reason for all the waivers on the road, right-of-ways and curbs and everything? It seems like a very large change from what we usually would specify.
I think in part, some of their consideration was that this is an expansion of existing mobile home park that was done and installed before, I think, any zoning at all. So part of it, I think, was working within the confines of what they had there. They are also private roadways, they're not ones that the townships are taking dedication of, like the ones in some of the newer single-family developments. I think were some of the initial justifications of what they provided.
But that is the modern code and standard though.
Well,
It's, I mean,
I-
I was gonna say, it's standard roadways, these aren't roads we don't want people speeding on, so what we did, what Jen asked us to do is provide the clear site triangles with the safety mechanisms, but still be able to have tighter curve radii, which keeps the traffic calming measure, so in an involvement like this, you don't want them, what's in the ordinance is for roads, you want to set roads per se, these are driveways, effectively, for private development, so you want to disclose traffic there. So there was an argument for that has been used for a long time, but for a site like this, and it's, these are private roads that we want the cars to drive extra slow, we want 25-mile-an-hour roads, these are probably 15-mile-an-hour roads.
and the fire marshal looked at these streets, correct?
Yeah.
Fire marshal, and they feel comfortable that they can get their emergency equipment around.
I think 20 foot is the minimum car width for local streets without paving. I think that width waiver is for the right of way versus the cartway width.
This road, the road radii in the ordinance is for roads that are at least 25 miles an hour or more, you're
set up for emergency dedicated.
Like a ladder truck needs 20 feet to set up with its outriggers.
Yeah, I think that's why you wouldn't sit that way. You know,
There's gonna be no street parking?
Correct, there's no street parking in here.
Which is why we asked for extra space.
we did add more, so that's not even more, so, yeah.
So we have 2, 4, 6. Is that all we have? 6 extra spaces?
Never more than 6.
Well,
They
each
need more than 6.
house has 2, but I only
Right.
see 6.
I think there's some other existing, they have to provide 2.25 spaces per unit. So 36, that gives them at least 9,
Ready for what the community to do about price half a block?
at least 9 extra in there. You can find his,
9 is
Yeah.
not a lot.
I know. Maybe the ordinance should be updated for
It should be way up here.
or more.
Especially for small lots and multi-families.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All you need is to have 2 people having a party at the same time or something. Now you're gonna have people on the streets hindering emergency vehicles for access.
We had it in all the places that we had discussed that. And the other thing to note from that time was we added more trail access that we all discussed too, so there's 6 trail access.
Yeah.
All right, so how
I'm
much parking
seeing
is there?
6. I'm only seeing 6 absolutely.
So there's only 6 extra parking spaces?
Yeah, I think there's one that is there. The ones up by existing units 35 and 36, those are new spaces that don't exist now. And then lots 77 and 78 each have, and 79
Got that.
each have 4. So there's 6 there, plus there's 6 new ones up between units 35 and 36.
So that's 12.
No,
Then the other
up
3,
here, these are new, all new spaces that aren't in the existing
actually 3 by 48.
I see.
development. And there's 3 on, what number?
By 48, but we're really existing HVAC space to.
Okay.
10?
Yeah, lot
So
40,
10 total?
no, 6 and 6 is 12 extra, plus there's 3, is that 3?
Yeah.
Extra on 48 gives you 15, so 2 per unit, plus, I think 15 more, which are required to have 9 more, so there's 6 more beyond what's required by zoning.
That should be changed.
So, up by the maintenance shed. Oh, this one's 48, so this is there too, and then there's 3 spaces that are in there.
And how many units are in here?
83.
83?
Yes, there's 47 existing, and they're adding 36.
So my place has 65 units. We have 18 extra parking spaces in every week and every one of them is taken. Plus, we have driveways. So I just feel like it's just not enough parking for people, especially if you, and we have also have the streets that have not the width of the ordinance, so you can't park on the street due to emergency vehicles needing access.
And that's something the
Just
township
just my thing.
really should look
because
at amending their
They should, because that's.
zoning
just not-
ordinance. I can pass that on to the solicitor. She has a running list of things we come across that should be updated. So multifamily.
I mean, I'm just going by the reality of what goes on in our neighborhood, so, I mean,
And that's what 2 car garage.
and that's with 2-car garages and at least 2-car driveways. So,
Probably the same, but there's less cars in the whole home, but if you have actually a mobile family, you only have 2 cars in the house.
They still have friends over.
That's why there's extra. But, and Melissa, just before I forget, you were good on, you guys talked about last time, the passive recreation area. We added that on that one field line there, so that's also shown on the other space.
So you're saying it complies?
It
does.
It
I'm
does
just saying
comply with
reality.
zoning, and
That's all.
they did add additional parking beyond what's required.
Well, they should really, they should, because, yeah, especially if you're asking for a waiver to not have streets the correct width, which I understand. But it just, you're just asking people to park on the streets, which now hinders, you know, if there's an emergency.
I'd say you can probably get a few more spaces. Some of them are greater than that you can add some spaces on the property lines, but
We added them all the places we discussed last time. We kind of, in the last meeting, we, cleaned it out in various places. Everything was added where we could. The other thing we had was a snow removal area there, where the 48 is up there. That's next to the parking. Which might have been, end up being used for parking, even though that's an area.
Actually, in our Saldo, parking is prohibited on internal roads in mobile home parks. So,
Who's gonna enforce that though?
it shall be the duty of the owner or operator of the mobile home park to enforce this provision according to the book. Doesn't answer your question, but that's what the book says. So, in any case, so they do encourage the more narrow roads by our ordinance, and the 20-foot is the minimum. The width that they have there does meet the minimum width for local streets. But, again, we all know the overflow, but it does meet zoning, that's through there, so. Okay. Any other questions or comments on the requested waivers or layouts so far? I think the only other couple comments, comment 4 under the Saldo was the need for public trails and things like that. Planning Commission previously indicated public trails are not necessary in here, just note the board supervisor shall make that final determination. And comment 5, the sewage pump stations must be screened with an opaque fence and or evergreen plantings. I think they originally had some trees there that have been shifted around the site, but they said they don't have a problem putting opaque fence through there, which makes it a little better with the proximity of the trail through there, at least on the one, I guess, kind of the backside of the pump station. But that will need to be screened, so you can fit a couple plants back there, great, but it needs at least a fence. Stormwater, overall they're meeting their peak rate reductions, and their groundwater recharge. They have to finalize their NPDS permit. We've had a couple minor discrepancies in stormwater things to clean up, but overall the basin and stormwater facility layout they have there does meet our core requirements. And then general comments are a few drafting cleanup items.
What's the property behind that? Is it those long, looks like.
Yes, those long lots that are on both sides of the creek,
Okay.
so it's all wooded. That's the wooded portion of Chambers and Kugler, that's on the opposite side of the creek from where they are.
The only reason I'm saying that is because you're talking about the trails here. Just, do you own this property? Do you own this property?
Yes.
So just FYI, the county is trying to acquire easements on these to put a 10-foot trail behind, behind the railroad track.
Right there.
Yeah.
And that's, there's two trails.
So your property was one that was on their list of possibly trying to get up into Lake Toe, so just FYI.
I think it's great. It's beautiful. screen the front and the back is gorgeous right there.
Yeah, I think that stream that falls further into the other properties. It doesn't come through like it does on the other development over there, so. Any other questions on anything with this plan or anything in the media letter?
Going back to the tree issue again, I notice on the top lot up in the front, you have 2 trees, but the one in the newer section has none.
I actually, Bobby noticed that, I'm not sure those two are the top line in front, maybe necessarily, I might go like pull them out a little bit, I don't know if I want to write on the top line, but that's something I can, I'll at least look at, when she can discuss.
I know if I had small children in a top lot, I would want trees.
Yeah, I know, we would, but what I'm saying is we had the 3 we're talking about, she put on the top line, I might want just outside. because-
As long as they're providing shade to
Yeah.
the top lot,
Right.
but the one in the newer section has none.
Yes.
I don't
Maybe
know,
you'll put,
I think the ones up front are fine,
Yeah.
maybe if you want to move them out a little bit,
Right.
but this other one has none.
Yeah, that's probably
add some
something,
trees around the top lot.
that's something she could add in the middle there, like maybe between the court, basketball court and lot to the president, and the top lot to the.
Okay.
Yes, a tennis court question? There was a request for a waiver for a tennis court, and if I could propose, perhaps another basketball court in lieu of the tennis court? There has been, as probably everybody's aware, some severe tennis court, or basketball court contention in the township. Any additional basketball courts would probably appreciate.
But those basketball courts are for those residents, it's private, it's not up for the public.
Yeah, well, there'll be kids there, kids have their friends over, it happens. Well, I'm saying,
Basketball court?
if we've got a standard recreational requirement,
Chestnut Ridge. Chestnut Ridge has the basketball issue.
Being that they don't, the people that live there don't think there's enough.
No, being that people from other developments want to play basketball on those courts, and that those residents are saying they don't want them there because it's private property. It was a board meeting like 2 months ago.
And what came out of that conversation?
Just people being highlighted and then just bitches.
No, but what might be the resolution to this issue?
The township home park.
Yeah, we know what that's about.
Yes, I know.
Yes.
Are there any other questions at the moment? If not, does the planning commission want to make a recommendation on any of their waivers? I know there's still some comments on the landscaping, that you guys may want to see that again, or if there's a certain percentage of trees that you're willing to waive, you can consider that in there. But if you want to consider action on the other waivers and tabling the landscaping one for now, or assigning a, if there's a certain percentage, if you're okay with, if they're able to add additional trees, except for 10% or 4%, or whatever it comes to. I think, what did you say, Susan, you were
72 short.
70 short?
72.
72 short, of the total, so I don't know if there's a threshold that you're comfortable that the planning commission doesn't want to see the landscaping plan again, and if not, the landscaping plan can certainly come back, for further review, but what's your guys' thoughts on the requested waivers at this point?
My personal feeling is I'm okay with all the waivers except the landscaping ones, so I'd like to see what they come back with before I go forward on that one, but the other ones I'm fine with.
Okay.
I'm fine with the same thing. She's the landscape expert, I think, so.
Okay,
I'm not
so if somebody somebody would like, you can make a motion,
How about we do this, can we label them instead of going through the actual code number and salary number, or the salary number, we just identify them on your review letter?
yeah. Susan, are you okay with there's two landscaping waivers.
Or
One's
I'd
the
like the two landscaping ones together and separated. And-
So that would be, that would be.
No, we put the two landscaping ones together, but separate from all of the waiver requests.
3H and 3I.
Yes.
That you wanna, your recommendation is to not take action on those
Correct.
this evening,
Correct,
to see what they come back with.
correct.
Okay. So,
Okay, yeah, you can do it as like that.
so just for clarity, the waiver listed in Jen's review letter under Saldo, item 3A, 3B, 3A is the right-of-way. 3B is the tangents and the curve relief. 3C is the minimum slope of 1% out of the entrance. 3D is the 20-foot paving radius at the intersection near Unit 14. 3E, which is sidewalks, which is the pervious trail and little sidewalks. 3F is no curbing. 3G is the tennis court, a waiver to not provide a tennis court. And then 3H,
that one we're taking.
that's going to be tabled, and 3I. So we're not going to include those.
But then you include
And then J, that's the solid waste collection.
Just a quick question, Jay, is H okay?
No, H and I is what the request was to,
I think
hold off on.
H is the alternating one, where actually, I talked about last meeting, I think the planning commission was fine with, just because of the limited room.
H refers to the screening buffer up along the western property line, up near the front against that existing dwelling. So that waiver relates to allowing a single buffer row of trees as opposed to an alternating,
Yeah.
two-row staggering. I is the one that is related to the quantity of trees. So,
But the request was to pull out H and I.
Yes.
Okay.
And the reason I did that, or my thinking on that was, since you're looking for possible placement of 72 more trees, that you may want to make a few more additions in that.
Well, in that area, we already have a pretty, all
I'm
type.
just saying I'm leaving that open as an option for you.
Yeah, okay, I understand that. What I mean is that waiver is only limited in width. We can't go stack. So it's not about, I mean.
Well, I'm not
add
suggesting
more.
that you necessarily wholesale change to have two complete alternating rows. I'm just saying I'm leaving that open so that if you have an opportunity to place some additional trees in that area, that you could.
No, we probably will, but that won't change the fact that they won't be staggered is all. So we can add more, but it's just the fact that we're not going to stagger them. So that doesn't change, that's not a quantity thing, that's just how they're laid out. The quantity one is separate totally. So, yeah, she may add some more in that row, but they won't be staggered, is all.
I was just putting the landscaping stuff together.
I'd just rather it really be down to one rather than just be, and then it be quantity, because I'd rather people not get confused on what we were.
So the request was, and I thought I heard that the rest of the commission was okay with those two items being pulled out. So, if we're okay with that, then someone needs to make a motion for the other waivers with the exception of 3H and 3I. If there's not agreement to that, we can readdress H. But the initial, request, and my understanding was that there was a consensus there, so we just need to take it to do a vote for the recommendation.
Somebody needs to make the formal, did somebody make the formal motion to consider all of them?
Now,
Except H&I? Okay. So,
Okay, I'll make a motion for all of the waivers requested except for items H and
right, you have a motion, and a second? Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor of the waivers requested with the exception of H and I, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Jacqueline had expressed an interest in looking for a conditional plan approval. We still have the landscaping issue hanging out there, so you can either table the conditional approval until the landscaping is resolved. You could make a recommendation on the conditional plan approval with the condition that's always there complying with our review letter, and that they need to revisit the planning commission for the landscaping. And then your focus, when it comes back, would be on the landscaping itself. So you can do it either way.
So what's the opinion of the commission? I mean, our next meeting is on the
In 2 weeks.
10th, in 2 weeks.
Right, the
So-
submission deadline for that has passed, but if we're solely considering the landscaping, I think you could come with a further discussion of that if you want. If not, your December meeting is December 8th.
It's also all
Yes, both of them are the second Thursday of the month. So I think it's November 10th and December 8th, if I remember these right.
So, is there a desire to make a motion to recommend to the supervisors conditional, this is conditional preliminary, right?
I think it's,
Or conditional final?
Just preliminary.
This is conditional preliminary?
yeah, we're just at preliminary. So same thing, you can do conditional preliminary, they have to resubmit final plans.
Yeah, so they don't have to come back, they'll come back for a final.
I know, I forgot that we're separate preliminary final. So when they submit their final plans, we can address the landscaping fully in their final plan submission.
So is there a desire to make a motion for conditional preliminary?
I'll make one.
Okay, we have a motion, a second. Questions, comments?
Sorry, I forgot. Preliminary.
So, the vote would be to recommend conditional preliminary land development approval to the supervisors with the understanding that they'll be back at the final stage to resolve the landscape issue.
Right, and that's contingent upon Technicol's October
October
24th
24th letter.
review letter. So that was made by Troy, seconded by Melissa. Okay.
Any further comments? Questions? All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Sure.
Some changes to address the tennis court. They did a lot of walking trail instead of the tennis. So, felt like that was something people that normally would use than the tennis court.
Makes sense. As pervious paving,
Yeah.
so it's less of an impact on stormwater, but it's also a little bit more expensive than some of the type trails. And it's permanent.
Hallelujah for that. That would be my response.
Okay, we have, what's the other one here?
There's no zoning hearing board or conditional use applications. So they go on the backside with other business.
There's no other business. Now we have an open forum for any other matters.
Don't forget to unmute Karen.
Yeah, I think Karen, if you do have comments, you should be able to unmute yourself. If you can't, just wave and I'll figure out how to do it.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. First off, thank you guys, for, looking out for our environment. I agree with Melissa in regards to the townhouses up there by Maple Inn. Why do you need a, dumpster? You know that they're gonna be throwing things in there that they shouldn't be throwing in there, especially if they already have their own trash cans, okay? It just, it didn't make sense to me. Secondly, I typically come in person, and again, they all got their designs and their maps out. But it's nothing's focused to the audience, to look at and see what you guys are looking at. You know what I mean? Can't they,
It's available on the website. There's an open thing on the website.
Is that brand new? Because we've never been there before.
Why do we have for us and also the open?
I think the open one's the agenda.
Yeah, it's,
I think they can see the agenda, I'm not sure
no, they can't. see
all the
plans.
supporting documents.
Okay.
But that, I
So
find
I
that.
brought that up, Karen, at that meeting we were at, to be able that as soon as an application comes in, that it gets posted on the website so that all residents can review what's coming up on the agenda, and Warren's working on that.
okay, because, it's just, I like to see it. visually
No, you're
see
right,
it.
you can't see it, you're right.
Yeah, and I had this discussion, I think, who did I talk to? Well, I think I talked to all the engineers today, but it might have been Mike Cohen with Upward was asking about sharing plans, and I said, that screen system's not working, but we've never been asked, like, they don't have a laptop set up where you would share your screen, like, during an all Zoom meeting. So, that's a comment that can be passed along and see if, since they are doing,
I thought we were doing that.
since they are doing Zoom.
But I did talk to
Is there
Warren
a
about
way
it.
they come in and look at the plans with the?
They can come in and look at them.
They can, but
If we know something's going on.
we can talk with the township if there's a way to
They're supposed to have.
share the plans during the meeting.
They're supposed to have the agenda on the website.
The agenda's up, so if you see the agenda, you see something.
The agenda will say something like DL Howell presentation. Okay, presenting what?
I think there's also
What's it have?
supposed to,
The agendas are very sparse for details.
right, before they got that newer website, they used
It's
to
gotten
keep
better.
a list on the website of current plans under development. I know Christie was trying to revive that. I may owe her comments on the list, but I think she was trying to get that back up there, so that that'll be back on the website, and you'll be able to kind of track what developments are under review, what has conditional approvals, if they're pending conditions, and which ones are.
But any new application for zoning hearing board, conditional use, or subdivision of land, as soon as they get the application, they should put it up on the website so people can look at it, because it's obviously gonna be on the agenda for the next, whether it be hearing
Right,
or, meeting, so, I mean,
right, so we'll pass that feedback on, and that if there's a way to share,
I did talk to Warren about it, so.
Okay.
Let's talk to him again. and
yeah, that's fine.
Hurry it along.
They're standing there with plans, looking at you guys.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, it was lot 13, lot 14, well, I can't see it. So it's like, I just want to visualize it. Secondly, just the guns about the trees with Keystone. There's about 8 trees, beautiful trees that they cut down that were maple, and they cut down to put in trailers with, and lilac bushes, it's I don't know. Anyway, that's it, we need our environment. It was here before we got here. I want to leave something for my grandkids to have, and not just buildings and, a few sparse little bushes. It needs to be a variety of things. And, I mean, the lot I lived in had 2 beautiful maple trees. When I moved out and the new company bought it off the Boysons who used to own it, they cut those trees down right away and put in a double line. So, they're just trying to and as far as the woods, that go back to, I guess, the creek back there, and it used to be a campground across the creek. With the.
Meadows or something, Chambers.
Yeah, the train tracks used to be there, you can go over to the, they tore all those, that wooded area out, just cut them all down, and it's like, nobody thinks, I'm sorry, I just am like disgusted with the way the world is today. I know you guys are doing the best jobs you can. I'm trying to do the best job I can. I mean, I've dedicated myself to, if I'm not in there reversing, I'm gonna be zooming, because I wanna know what's going on. I just wish more people would actually care, But anyway, that's about it, honey. If I think of anything, I'll write it down.
Okay, all right, thanks, Karen.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else?
Just had a question about,
You got to, we just give his name for the record.
Shane Haddon, of Friedel Road. A question about sort of the high-level, big picture for the whole township. Because at the moment, there are over 500 new homes that are either approved or proposed or under construction right now. And that's a lot. I've seen the township kind of quadruple in population since I've been here. And have we done any kind of a quantitative look at what can Honeybrook Elementary School handle? What can the NCCMA plant handle? And then how much of a chunk does each of these proposed developments take out of that? Like,
That's
for
what
example,
that's what the comp plan accomplishes. That was done a few years ago. It looks at all that stuff. The comp plan's a document.
so we know those
It's been there for 10
numbers,
years.
and we know how far we can go before we have to say, you can't build right now, because if you do, you've got to pay for new school.
Is there a projection, how many kids are going to be in the with the new development at all?
That's not in the comp plan.
Yeah, no, it's not.
But it mentions school when it looks at the overall.
But I don't recall our comprehensive plan saying, over this many years, we can afford to build this many units. We designated areas where we preferred development to happen, but we didn't really look at the quantitative analysis that Shane's talking about.
The sewer issue, I can't speak to the schools, the sewer issue is handled whenever there's a new development, they have to go through sewage planning. And if they are connecting to public sewer, they have to get sign-offs as part of that sewage planning from the sewer authority. And one of the comments is, does their system have capacity, for that development? And they look at those individually to make sure that they do still have capacity.
But if they're looking at them individually, then are they not looking at them as an aggregate?
No, they look at them,
Because-
like, as they come in, then those developments have to reserve the capacity, and the sewer authorities have to, allocate that and
Okay.
be tracking. They can't tell, so, we had, Chestnut Ridge came in, was on the books for this, much. Before they can record their plans, they have to have all of their agreements and sign offs with the sewer authority, and the sewer authority requires certain payments for the reservation of capacity. So those developers have to reserve it, so they know that that's reserved and taken care of. So next development comes, they know even though those houses aren't built yet out at Chestnut Ridge, when they go to look at one of these other developments, they know that capacity is already reserved for here. So they know what they can put in from the sewer standpoint.
Okay.
So,
And when they hit the capacity for sewer, then they
That's
don't
it.
build anymore.
Yep.
Unless
Yeah.
they paid upgrade the plant.
Yep. No, the plant could definitely use some upgrades, that's for sure. It used to be silent, as somebody who lives right down the street from it, and now I can always hear it. Sometimes it's super loud, most of the time Derek's getting under control, it seems like, but the schools would be another key concern. I know that at least a couple of years ago, there were 24 kids in each kindergarten class.
Now,
I when I went to kindergarten, Honeybrook Elementary, there was less than 20 in my class. And I can't imagine, I've worked at schools, I've been an educator, and you can't manage a room full of 24 6-year-olds, 5 and 6-year-olds. That's, and it was out of hand, and my friend had to take their son out because the class was too big, the teacher couldn't manage it, and things were out of hand. So these, and as our schools get more overloaded, and that's going to lower the quality of the schools. As the quality of the schools go down, the rating of the school district goes down, and all our property values go down. So, a master planning process for what our capacities are and where we're going and what we can allow needs to be something that we really consider. Because, individually, yeah, I mean, it's some here, some there, a few under here, a few under there. This will come back to bite us.
What was the comp plan that was done in 2015?
16. So that process is gonna start in about 2 years.
Right.
The comp plan, and actually, the comp plan is probably, the current one has a little bit less density than the previous one.
Yeah,
I think it has proof that it's sensitive.
Because of the Rockland
And
overlay,
station
the
overlay, took that off.
Rockland station overlay, that we eliminated that, and that had a reducing effect on density.
Yeah.
But Rockland Station also has a proposal for an additional elementary school.
But where are you gonna put it? If you need to build a new school, where are they gonna put it? Because all the houses are on land now. You know what I mean?
Actually, Honeybrook has, the building itself has a 4-classroom expansion that can be done on the north side of the building. And I'm trying, that's why I got my computer up, I was going to just see what kind of, see if I had the numbers on that. But I can't get onto, my drive in the office that I read it from.
Maybe you can bring that to the future meeting.
Yeah, good luck with that, Chris.
I mean, we don't have a better source.
Exactly.
We get accurate information in schools.
Hey, Jen, just another comment about the agenda. Going back to Shane's comment, on this upward investments as an example. And when I looked at this, I'm like, what is this?
I didn't either, I had to look at the address to see what they were talking about.
Yeah,
It's the Zook family,
Well, now I know what it is, but when I got the package or someone was looking at this agenda on.
Did you think it was somebody like a stock company?
Well, I figured that Upward Investments was the company that was the developer that, I don't care that it has Upward Investments on there, but I could have used an extra, parenthetical line and said, this is what we're doing here. It just would have been helpful.
I'll let Christie, when she puts the agendas together.
I mean, the
A
other
little
two,
description of,
the Maple Inn Estates and the Keystone Court, I knew what those were.
Right.
They were much clearer.
yeah,
did the same thing.
we could say Maple Leaf Estates, like if you resaid townhome development plan, upward investments, manufacturing,
Just a
building.
Four words.
Yeah, just, got it. I'll let her know.
Gary, was that rich guy, that Zook that was here? Or was that-
No, no,
No,
no.
that's Richard Hoover.
That's why I
Yeah,
thought that was Richard Hoover.
he's doing the building,
He's building the building.
Yeah, he owned the property, he did the hardware store,
You know, he's super.
and he did his Hoover buildings.
right.
He's done,
He doesn't,
He does a really good job.
He said it was Zook, I thought.
No, it was actually Zook's daughter.
Okay.
Yeah.
I have one more question. There was something that was said somewhere somehow, and I don't know where, but about a possible dollar store, Dollar Tree, Dollar General.
Oh, I know where you heard that from. I know where you heard that
I heard
from.
that too.
That was at that meeting that you were at.
Again?
Do you remember?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Is that, I mean,
There is a sketch plan for a dollar store that will be on the November 10th agenda. A formal land development plan has not been submitted, but they did submit a plan for a formal zoning review. So that's been done and identified zoning issues, and I believe they intend to come to the November meeting to discuss the sketch plan review letter that was done, which is solely zoning ordinance comments. So,
Where? Down by Birdo Road.
Same place as before?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
Oh, in that lot,
Yes.
in that box, right?
Oh,
Wow.
Hence,
Hang on a second, we can't hear.
Sorry, Karen.
The what lot?
Sorry, Karen, there was a lot of sidebars, so can you start over?
You know what I mean? And a lot of these dollar stores, they're not open late anymore, they don't open early anymore, and some of them are downright disgusting when you go into them.
Unfortunately, I don't think we can determine what somebody wants to do on their property. All we can do is look at it if it complies. You know, what you're saying maybe makes total sense, but, you know, we can't tell somebody what they want to, what they can or can't do on their property, as long as it meets the ordinance.
But didn't this get shut down for like a lot of other reasons before? I mean, the location, I mean, that's like the intersection of death there as it is.
Why do you think we sold our house? As soon as I saw them doing, perk tests, I'm like, for sale, we're going.
That's a
Seriously,
horrible place.
it is a horrible place.
property.
They're just, you know, I mean, they're gonna submit, they're gonna have to meet the zoning and the requirements, and, you know, we have to deal with it if it comes in.
I don't understand why we're doing this all over again. This-
But we can't stop somebody from submitting a plan.
I understand that, but all the reasons it didn't go before.
And maybe that'll be the reasons why it doesn't go again.
I mean, that's a tight space.
It is, and it's
I-
very close to the
there's-
intersection to have,
Well, on top of that, you know, they're gonna have to provide stormwater parking, and that, I'm telling you, if that lot is, it's very tight. So,
I have a question.
Sure.
All the expansion that's going on, oh, sorry.
Hi, Jerry.
All right, thanks, Karen. All the expansion that's going on, all on 322, just like that Maple Inn, I didn't hear anything about roadways and how they're gonna handle all the extra crashes and traffic that's gonna happen along that road.
They're required to give it.
And-
That's a PennDOT question.
I keep hearing that, but, you know, you have Brandywine Hospital that's closed, you got more and more people coming in here. Some of them are older, you got a 10-hour wait down at Chester County Hospital in that emergency room. And you don't have, I mean, the traffic's gonna be a barrier. You got a new traffic light going down in Downingtown with the other new traffic light that's going down by the bypass. So you're gonna have one big cluster, and no one's really, in your comprehensive plan, it's gotta be, you have to have certain fail-safes in there and say, whoa, you're just choking everybody here. And, you know, if you put too many people in the box, people do get upset. And it just, you know, society isn't really too hot right now at all the stuff that's going on around us at all different levels. And it's just, I just wanted to say that, that's all.
well, they did.
And then the taxes keep going up, that's the other thing. Food goes up. The budgets are gonna be way wacko this year, because if you buy kerosene for your mobile home, it's like $700 for 100 gallons.
It's $6 a gallon.
And it's $4 for a dozen eggs. So that's gonna hurt everybody's budget. Just to say that, I know you can't control that, but it's not gonna be pretty.
I mean, they did at one point have a 322 task force of people that work with other municipalities along 322 to try to figure out how they're gonna deal with all the traffic, see whether they
Right.
find out whatever happened with that.
It seems like everybody's kicking the can down the road, from the local government to the state to the federal. Everybody's kicking the can down the road. The can's gonna run out of, you're gonna run out of can and road. That's what I'm saying. And no one's, you're gonna put all this stuff in here, and no one's gonna fix it. And then like he said about the tennis courts and this and that, yeah, that goes to the HOA, and that's for that development, that's for that development. And it's like everybody else gets kind of choked out. That's all I'm trying to bring up. That's what happened in the one meeting where the people got mad because the HOA people were here. They're paying $1 per month. I don't blame them. I'm like, hey, that's my court. I'm paying every month for it. I can see their point.
Well, that's why we're hopeful that the township will get land to put the park in for those that don't live in the developments that have private facilities. I
Right,
mean,
but then everything's getting kind of choked out. So it's kind of like you're fighting to get to the park. Because there's everybody else going to the park. So you're kind of like, it's getting choked. That's all I wanted to say.
Okay, thank you.
And I appreciate it, thank you.
Yep, thank you. Anyone else? And I guess you see our meeting dates. Keep in mind that our planning commission meeting is November 10th. I mean, two short weeks away.
I'll just let you know now, I have to be out of town
Okay.
December.
I gotta make sure.
And December too.
No, I'm fine for
In December, it's just November.
Corey, you'll be here,
Yes.
both,
Okay.
Melissa, both?
Yeah, but they're not gonna be bringing that landscape back in 2 weeks, right?
No.
No,
Okay.
no, they'll bring that back at
With the
final,
final plan.
at final plan. So I just want to make sure we'll have,
I'm
well, we
sure
shouldn't,
Aaron will be here.
there
I'm
shouldn't
sure
be
Aaron's
action. So the deadline, let me make sure before I count on one,
As long as it's will be here.
two, that, all right. The deadline to submit for November's PC meeting should have been this past Tuesday. So as far as I know, the Dollar General sketch plan will be on the agenda. Again, that's a sketch plan. There's no formal action to be taken on that. The DR Horton plan has been submitted. The goal is to have the zoning review complete for the November meeting, to have discussion on the zoning issues, and then to have the Saldo and stormwater reviews on that plan completed for the December meeting. So we'll be likely talking about that plan at the next 2 meetings. Mike from my office, I believe, is coming to both of those meetings as well. I think I'm coming too. I don't think it was a trade that he was offering. So, and then I will take your suggestion you guys mentioned about having the solicitor here. So I'll mention that to Mike and Warren and her and see what their thoughts are. So November, that should be the 2 items, so there shouldn't be any action items. So if we don't have a quorum, we could probably still have open discussion, but we'll try and make sure that Aaron, or one of the Levi's are here, so we do have a formal quorum. So Melissa and Gavin, you guys are good for both November and December?
Yeah, and they usually call me for a ride, and neither one of them called me tonight, so I don't know what.
Okay, I'll have Christie reach out to them and,
I'll call Levi and find out what his deal is.
okay, yeah, if you can just check their availability for November and December, and I can shoot Aaron an email and find out hers, just so we know, I know we get fine with those meetings being off schedule.
Is DR Horton submitting something, or
They did submit land development plans.
assholes?
It's on a time delay. He bleeped that out. All right, if there's nothing else, I'd like to ask for a motion to adjourn.
Yeah, I'm gonna strike that comment.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. All right, thanks, folks.
Thank you, young man.
Excuse the dress.
You want me to hold the door for you, the equipment, I'll do that.
Oh, no, I'll just make 2 trips.
Oh, okay, no problem.